So I live, or we live, 5 blocks from Bath Iron Works, and during Advent season, during Lent, there are vigils every week during those seasons, and then we go there during Keep Space for Peace Week. We go there during various christenings and at some other times as well. These destroyers, again, as I said, are being used to surround Russia and China, being deployed throughout the Mediterranean Sea, the Black Sea, the Baltic Sea, going into the Barents Sea to surround Russia, and at the same time they're being ported in South Korea, Japan, Philippines, Guam, and other places in the Asia Pacific as part of Obama's pivot. In order to introduce these missile defense systems, the United States had to pull out of the ABM treaty with Russia, the anti-ballistic missile treaty that outlawed missile defense systems. Missile defense, the idea is have a bullet hit a bullet, so if you attack Russia first and then they try to launch their retaliatory capability, you take out, with so-called missile defense, you take out their retaliatory capability so that you have a successful, quote-unquote, successful first strike attack. And so these things now are being deployed on land and on sea, and the Obama administration has really escalated them. An important story, I think, is that General Dynamics is, the majority stockholders are the Crown family in Chicago. They are the family that made Barack Obama. Barack Obama was a state senator, 2 years in the state senate, about 100 times in Illinois. He voted present on the most controversial issues. They were setting him up to become president of the United States. The Crown family ran interference for him nationally within the military-industrial complex. He raised more money than John McCain when he first ran against, when he first ran for president. And then, being a Jewish family, they raised money within the Jewish community across the country for Obama. And so he owed them. So George W. Bush had a deployment plan for missile defense that was Boeing-centric program that was going to go into the Czech Republic and Poland. Obama came into office and said, we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to go with these destroyers made at General Dynamics, Bath Iron Works, that is a General Dynamics program, and escalated that program at $1.2 billion per ship. And now they're building what they call the Zumwalt stealth destroyer that are $4 to $7 billion per ship. So Obama has been very good to the Crown family and General Dynamics. So I think these are important connections. We're in Bangor area of Washington State that is working on the Trident base there, and he's just written a paper on the on the whole Navy budget and the Trident budget. So I'm passing this around. I promised him I would. The Navy is in big trouble. The bottom line is the Navy's in big trouble. There's a story here, Navy tries to cover up new carriers' exploding costs. So not only did they have big problems with the Trident program, funding it, the aircraft carriers are way over budget and they don't have enough money for those. And now these destroyers at Bath Iron Works are way over budget and they don't have enough money for all that. And so the Navy's in crisis about how they're going to keep funding all of these various ships. The bottom line is they can't do it. The Pentagon has said that these budgets are not sustainable. They acknowledge it. So there's going to be some changes. And so the way I see it, one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to completely wipe out social progress in order to pay for these things, or there's going to be some dramatic cuts, which means there's even greater possibility now for the conversion idea, because workers are worried about what they're going to do, how they're going to feed their families. And I say we should become their allies. And so my whole line in Maine is, hey, we can't just expect the workers in their unions to figure this out. They need community support. That's the job of the peace movement, is to build that community support for a conversion process. And we know empirically that you can double the jobs, the numbers of jobs when you do it, and help in a small way solve for climate change, if it's not too late, which it very well might be. But building rail and building wind and et cetera can help us begin to deal with that. So it's a win-win for all the movements, for the environmental movement, the labor movement, the peace movement, the social justice movement. So this issue of conversion, to me, is one of the unifying themes that we need to bring our movements together. So I highly recommend reading Glenn's piece there and incorporating that message.
And have you heard about those new trains with sails?
No.
They're coming out.
Right?
Wow.
Two other things, Florida specific, I want to mention. Hurlburt Field up in the Panhandle in Fort Walton Beach has become the cyber training headquarters for the military, where all the cyber warfare people are being trained now. Cyber warfare is really incredibly important. This whole recent North Korea movie thing, as it turns out, the hacker experts, I've seen two different stories. One of them was on CBS News. They covered it, that North Korea didn't do it. It was an inside job, and but they blamed it on North Korea. So, but cyber warfare is a major new warfare battle. So keep an eye on Hurlburt and what they're doing. The other thing that I think is really important is that the X-37 is being moved to Kennedy Space Center on a permanent basis. The X-37 is the so-called successor to the shuttle. Looks like a shuttle, it's sort of a mini shuttle, but it's a drone. It doesn't have a crew, and it doesn't have anything to do with civilian space program or anything. It's totally a military project. It's a surveillance and first strike attack program. A couple years ago, NASA did a mission to the moon where they, from orbit outside of the moon, fired a missile into the moon. They said ostensibly they were looking to find water under the layer, under the lunar surface. But what they were really doing, they were testing the capability of firing a missile from space to a planetary body. So if they can hit the moon like that, they could, from space, hit Russia or China with the same kind of thing. So these military space planes become the vehicles at this stage to help deliver those kind of first strike attacks. And in fact, Russia has said repeatedly that the thing they're most worried about, even more than being surrounded by missile defense, is the military space plane, what they call these hypersonic vehicles. That this military space plane on its last mission stayed in space for a year. So it can be up there orbiting, doing surveillance, and then all of a sudden at any time can unleash an attack, and boom, what is Russia or China to do? So they're really freaking out by that, and they're saying that with these missile defense encirclements and these new hypersonic vehicles, forget any negotiations for nuclear disarmament, because it makes no sense for them to reduce their nuclear retaliatory capability, just as the United States is expanding its first strike attack capability. So really important things. I'm going to stop there and take any questions you might have about anything.
How we can find out exactly what they're doing. I was thinking, of course, solar power would be the thing for Florida for them to transition into. But how do you find out what's actually going on in there, in that plant?
Well, there's a lot more available than you realize. First of all, you go to their website, then you send somebody to their PR office and pick up some of their brochures, and oftentimes they have newsletters that they publish every month for the workers that reports on various things that they're doing. And
How do you get into a PR office and
you just have somebody dress up nicely and drive up and go in and and say that, maybe send a young person, say they're doing a report for school,
Yeah.
and on local economy, or and they wanted to know how many people work there, and, it's, some, that kind of thing. And then just Google them, and you'll learn a lot more. You'll find local news articles that say they received this much money to do this, and, so you piece that together and you have a good picture. And then ideally, you hang out in some bars nearby and meet some of the workers. And,
I've done that, yeah. I learned to love scotch.
What a holy mission, what a holy mission.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, well, your website is very impressive. And the name that you have is impressive, Global Network. Now, that's a pretty ambitious name. But your website shows you're working on it, for sure. And I know you're traveling all around, so it's really a huge project effort that you're involved in. I saw your talk over there in New York, so that's why I had some stuff, but so I pretty much, and all that you're doing is good for sure, because that's a coming area. I just want to say that in all of our talks, I think we don't want to get the they and us. I think it's all of us. I think we're all involved in the problem. And with some of us are working more diligently to make a solution, like yourself and many others here. But we are part of the problem.
Let me say something about the Global Network. It was created in 1992 by the Florida Coalition for Peace and Justice and the group in Colorado Springs at the Air Force Space Command headquarters called Citizens for Peace and Space. Also with the help of Carl Grossman, the journalism professor from Long Island, New York. And for some years, I coordinated both the Florida Coalition and the Global Network until the end of 1997. And then by then I saw that the space thing was really taken off in a big, terrible way, and I felt like I needed to work on that full time. I wasn't able to do that while working for the Florida Coalition. So a very difficult decision for me to leave after 15 years working there, but I felt it was the right thing to do. And so I went to work just full time for the for the Global Network. By that time my son had just graduated from high school, and I was able to really begin to travel and to try to build the organization. We have about 150 affiliate groups around the world now, and every year we meet in a different country, a different place where this space technology infrastructure is happening. Again, if you pick up the newsletter on the table over there, you'll see some of the reports from various countries. But as it turns out, as satellites orbit the Earth, they have to talk to the planet, they send signals just below them, wherever they are at the time. And so to receive those signals, the US has had to build what are called downlink stations around the Earth that receive the signals and then transfer them again via satellite back to the US, to Colorado, where they're all received. And so then in all these countries, there are groups that say, we don't want our country to be used by the US, by the NSA to spy on everybody, or for Star Wars bases and targeting and all that kind of thing. So that became the natural constituency of the Global Network. And so now we see increasingly deployments of things. 2 years ago, our meeting was in Sweden, in what they call the High North, way up in the northern part of Sweden, that is being turned into a US NATO space downlink and testing area for drones and all this kind of stuff. And so even people in Sweden don't know about it. So we met there to try to shine a bigger light on this issue. This coming August, we're going to meet in Kyoto, Japan, because we were invited by peace people in that community, because the United States is putting 2 missile defense radars in Kyoto Prefecture. So we're going there. So we try to bring good people from around the world to share information so that everyone has a greater understanding about how that particular location fits into this overall U.S. Space warfare directed machine. Everything that Pentagon does today is coordinated by space technology. So no matter whether you're a troop on the ground, busting down doors, you know, those guys in their Humvees got computer screens where they're looking at high resolution three-dimensional maps that were created by NASA missions years ago, and they're hooked up to satellites where they're getting that stuff. So they're reliant on space technology. The planes, the ships, everything is now hooked up to satellite technology, and the U.S. is saying, if we could do that, so can another country, so we've got to be able to deny other countries access to space. And so originally the idea was, oh, we'll just blow up Russian or Chinese satellites, but now they can't really do that because of so much space junk up there, orbiting debris. It's become an environmental disaster up there. They have to keep moving this space station out of the way as space junk is coming dangerously close. So that's where cyber warfare came from. You don't need to blow up their satellite necessarily. You can just shut it down. You can just by cyber, you know, hacking, so to speak. So that's why that's become such a huge thing. But in order to get the massive amount of money for cyber warfare, they've had to frighten the people, and that's why they keep saying, "Oh, no, it's North Korea's attacking us or China's attacking us," when in fact it's the other way around. So that's, you know, typical game they play.
So with cyber warfare, is there a part within the military that, like, is there one of the branches of military that does cyber warfare?
Yeah, cyber command.
Who is that part of the Army, Navy?
Well,
Air
that's
Force,
what they
or-
call, what's the word for it? Inter service. You know, it's each. Well, you know how they do it. Each service has their own cyber
their own.
command,
Uh-huh.
but then there's an overall cyber command.
Mhm.
I forgot where their headquarters of the command is,
Mhm.
but the training, as I said, is in Hurlburt Field. But I forgot which base now is the.
And Harbor Future, that's the one in Florida.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was, I did hear after North Korea's internet service was attacked after the so-called, you know, what they did or didn't do, which they probably didn't do with the Sony. But one of the experts that was being interviewed on NPR was just talking in general terms of what had happened to North Korea's internet, because of course I don't understand it, but they have some way of watching all these things. And then the last question from the interviewer was, you know, do you think this was the United States doing it? And of course he fudged on that. I mean, he doesn't know, and to say so would be. But the one thing that he did, he made a comment, he said, well, it's not like a virus thing. He said it was too sustained. So it was definitely something very deliberately done. And he was definitely pointing the finger without saying so. But the one comment he made was, what is interesting, he said, for such a small internet system that North Korea has, is that it took them so long to take it down. And that, so he was kind of making fun of it too, like what the state of, I don't understand all that, but I did think that that was kind of interesting, that he thought that they shouldn't have had that, have required like 8 or 9 hours worth of effort before they were actually able to get the,
They were probably playing with it. And,
well, that could be.
you know, it's called field test. You know, it was a good excuse for a field test of the operation. The first big cyber attack they ever did was the Yugoslavia War. Remember when U.S. and NATO attacked Yugoslavia? All those NATO planes flying in there, bombing Belgrade and other places in Yugoslavia. What they did was they infiltrated Yugoslavia's computer system, military computer system, and shut down their air defense system. So that as these NATO warplanes came over bombing them, they could not defend themselves at all because it was completely shut down. And so that was a field test. And so I'm sure this is, they like, that a lot of these wars now are field tests where they can, that's why we have a war every year or so, because they're testing new technology all the time. And they want to put it to work in a real-time situation. And so they create these incidents that they can then field test this stuff. So I believe this whole North Korea thing was a total setup as a field test of that whole cyber, you know,
Mhm.
the new developments, because they put, the last couple of years, a lot of money into cyber, and they haven't really had a chance to.
And I've seen different articles and things about saying that from private security firms saying that they don't think that North Korea attacks Sony, that it just doesn't, there's a lot of reasons why the pattern doesn't look right, and they say.
They're not advanced enough,
And
that's the
not
bottom
to
line.
mention the weirdest marketing program ever, so now we're into totally new advertising
Yeah.
territory.
Yeah,
You're a horribly depressing person.
I hear that all the
It was
time.
more depressing today than ever, I think.
You know, I'm reminded of those words from Bob Dylan's song "Masters of War." You know, you play with my world like it's your little toy. It seems to me like the reality that you're telling us about is that you know there's a few 100,000 militarists in the world, and maybe an equal number of corporate heads or whatever, and they're operating on a plane that the other 7 billion of us don't know anything about, and somehow you've managed to understand that level that they're operating on, but I don't see what in the world we can do about it. So what is it that gives you hope and what keeps you going?
I wanna
knowing, you know, that all the time we've been in the peace movement, these guys seem to always be 12 steps ahead of us.
I want to respond.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Bruce's message, so I got the 3. I know the since like probably more than close to 30 years, and I can hear his voice. Always 3 things. None of us are pure, 100% pure. We are always talking about. None of us we are not 100% pure.
Amen.
And other things is 1492 Columbus discovered this continent. And they are doing, the United States of America is doing the same thing to the, just instead of the America, just we are space, or dominated space. This is all like his message is he never changed. But first he mentioned about like how he involved this movement, because he was inside of the base, and then some people is standing, just 2 or 3 people standing, and they're affected. And this is the 3 things always Bruce mentioned us.
First of all, I want to say, I get depressed all the time, okay? I get depressed all the time, and some days, I get up in the morning, I turn on my computer, I spend too many hours in front of the computer. And Meredith worries about me, because I do.
Yeah.
And some days, I literally feel immobilized that I can't move. I feel frozen. And I know, and I push myself, and I have to really, really, really work hard to get through my depression. And it got so bad that I talked to my doctor about it, and he gave me a prescription for medical marijuana.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Paxil.
No, medical marijuana, it's legal in Maine. And so I have my card, and I either a cookie or a little pipe almost every day, and the first thing I do is I run to my computer and I write poems, or what I think might be.
Well, that's not the answer I was looking for.
This process is pouring out of me all of my rage and my frustration and everything else. It's pouring out of me, and it's been fantastic. One of my poems is in that newsletter on the table over there. I invite you to read it. I find hope in all of you and all of my dear, dear friends in the global network all over the world and all over this country. Everywhere I look on the map, I got a big world map on my door in my office. there are people everywhere doing good stuff. And that gives me hope when I remember that I don't have to do it alone. I don't have to do it by myself. It's not about me, it's not about my group, it's about me doing my bit, everybody else doing their bit, and when we do that, wow, Jesus Christ, excuse me for saying it, we are really doing more than we think we are. And I also try to remember that everything and everyone has an Achilles heel, including the military-industrial complex. So I'd like to then dig into that. What is their Achilles heel? Well, of course, it's money. That's why recently I saw an article just the other day. I wrote a piece about it. The incoming 15 Republican senators have pledged to eliminate the food stamp program.
Oh, gosh.
Why? Well, because they need money for the Tridents and the aircraft carriers and the Aegis destroyers and the F-35 that are way over budget, fighter planes. And so I see it as two trains heading for a collision course. One is called Endless War, Global Domination, Full Spectrum Dominance, and the other one is called Social Progress. And so I say to people all the time when I speak to them, I'm not asking you to drop what you're doing and come work on space. I'm not asking that. But what I am asking is that you defend social progress in whatever way you can, wherever you can in your community. Defend social progress and take those dollars out of this endless war train, and that's how we defeat this thing. And it is possible. It is possible because people don't want to lose their Social Security. And believe me, they're going for it. And they don't want to lose their Medicare and Medicaid, and they're going for it. There was an editorial in Space News a few years ago that said, how are we going to pay for all this stuff? We've come up with a plan, and we're sending our lobbyists to Washington now to secure it. And they said it's the entitlement programs that are officially Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and what's left of the welfare program. So it's not a coincidence that they're doing a local, statewide, national attack on all social programs. That's part of their plan. And then finally, what gives me the ability to unfreeze myself are peace walks. Because peace walks allow me to go around the wall, the barrier of politicians and corporate media, and allows me to have direct eye contact with legions of my fellow citizens. And I do this personal commitment pledge that when I go on a peace walk, I carry a sign, and I carry it every step of the way, and I turn it both directions when traffic is going either way, and I really work hard at it. I work. I don't talk to anybody when I'm walking. I work the whole time because my goal is for every set of eyes to see my sign when I'm on that peace walk. And for me, that helps. That helps me.
I'd have to say, you know, it's so important, but I often call getting arrested committing art. And you touched on art and how important those visuals are. It's very important, the art, and it also helps sustain the spirit, having the art, the poetry, the music. But
Well, I want to speak to that, and a lot has been said, and I want to thank you because when I heard your first talk, and when you talk about space, it looks like we're shut out, and you did talk today about your conversion and about converting the approach to Bath to conversion, and we're just chock full of wonderful, productive ideas. But what I want to comment on is when you pulled that poster out, and tears came to my eyes, and we worship mind in the modern society, but humans are emotional beings, and this is a vein to tap, and art and music and people in the street, you know, that's what moves people. And so that's really, really important. And I just wanted to say a couple of things. We are the baby species on Earth. We're the newcomers, except for all the insects and birds that are morphing out there. So I see us as toddlers. You know, we were given creative power by the Creator. That's what the book says. And so, you know, the little toddler goes over and picks up the lighter and doesn't know he could burn the house down. And maybe he burns the house down and you forgive the toddler because the toddler does not know better. So there is a level perhaps at which we could say we are toddlers and we are at the wall and we have to learn this lesson. And I want to remind you that in our overpopulation problem and how we can, under the current distribution plan, which is rotten to the core, how are we going to feed and house everybody? We don't know what the 2 billion new arrivees are bringing. The children have not yet revealed their agenda, and I think there's a lot of hope in that. And we need to be really good examples for them. And I thought I had a final thought, but I've forgotten what it was, so I'll stay there. But
Can I just say there that you make a very important point about emotion. Emotion, I think people on the left, liberals, whatever you want to call people, because they're so intellectually based, are literally in many cases afraid of emotion. And I think this is what the right wing is recognized, that people are really touched by emotion, and the right wing has learned to use it very effectively. I don't think we use it very effectively. I'm not saying in a manipulative way we should use it, but I think we should show our hearts more than we do. I think that working class people keep voting against their self-interest, and one reason why is because people tap into their outrage, into their emotion, and they distort it and manipulate it. And I think if we were to use our natural, heartfelt emotion more, that we would find that working class people would respond to us more than they presently do, because we're so intellectual all the time, and we think we have to be,
logical.
Yeah.
Right.
Fox,
Well, I did
Fox
remember
News
my
has obviously
final
figured that out.
Oh, yeah.
which was I would like to invoke the 100th monkey, and everyone knows the story, right? Okay, and so the critical mass could be happening right this minute.
Here's a question here.
I was just thinking, as everybody's talking about, how coming to Kings Bay year after year can get depressing. It's like you stand at the gate and hand out the leaflets, do it again next year, and we say, well, are we getting anywhere? And it's easy to conclude it's hopeless, or what's the point? But I think that the mistake in that would be trying to measure outcome in the wrong way. I think the measure is not outcome, but the measure is presence.
Love is the measure, Dorothy Day.
If I believe in my presence is important there, like Bruce was saying, even if one person shows up, it's good. But if I'm trying to count outcome as numbers and things, then I'm going to feel bad about it.
And I think this comes from our immersion, the mind colonization, how our minds have been colonized by this mechanistic capitalist society where everything is about on paper. What's the bottom line?
Yeah.
Okay? And we don't realize how we've been colonized, and we have to decolonize our minds so that we can be true,
Artisans.
yeah.
There is a project that is going around the country. It's called the Forgiveness Project. I don't know if any of you have been familiar with it, but it's coming to St. Augustine. David and I are involved in bringing it, and it will be the exhibit will be on display there for about 10 days. But reading about it, where it's been, and how powerful it has been for people. They're 3x5 things that you put on the wall, and it's a picture, a big picture, and then the story about what the picture is portraying and what kind of forgiveness happened. But I think it has the potential to bring back people's humanity to themselves. We're so full of anger and resentment and violence, and this project I think has the potential. And one other thing I want to say is that if you haven't read Desmond Tutu's book called The Book of Forgiving, I recommend it highly. It has the potential to change the world if we would all take it to heart. So.
Is that the name of it?
It's called The Book of Forgiveness.
The Book of Forgiveness.
Written by Desmond and his daughter,
Wow, okay.
Opposed.
Bruce, I just wanted to go back to your emotion suggestion. One of the puzzles is why do people vote against their best interest? In Ohio, for example, where my daughter lives, as opposed to Maine, well, I won't say Maine, but let's say New York City,
Let's
where
say
we have
Maine.
the intellectual elite who know the right answers, including most liberals. But just because the answers come from there, they are rejected by the working people of Ohio. Why? And how do we get beyond that? The emotional contact, do you have more to say about that?
Well, I'll tell you a story. Our governor in Maine, LePage, Republican, Tea Party, fascist. He's cruel, he's mean, he's nasty, he's an alcoholic, he's a rageaholic. When he first got elected, he just got reelected by a wide margin. When he first got elected, the first thing he did was to tell the NAACP in Portland to kiss his ass
Oh,
when they asked him for a meeting. And so it's been like that nonstop, and he gets reelected. Now, how did he get reelected? One day I'm in the shower on a Saturday, and I got the radio on, and I'm listening to the governor's Saturday weekly radio address. And I'm riveted to Governor LePage, because it's all emotion, and it's tapping into my, my emotional rage against the system. And he's totally manipulating it. And so working people all over the state, our last peace walk started way up in the rural part of the state. And you didn't see anything but LePage signs until you got down to Portland, okay? Now why? It's because he's tapping into that. And then after him came the Democrat response. And I was bored to death. And I could not listen to it. It was not getting through to me because it was all up here and all bureaucratic and then, this and everything else. And it wasn't touching on anything real, and it was just zip. And so that's the Democrats' problem, is they don't know how to talk to people that are upset about what's going on. And it's a wide open field then to the Republicans who have hired the best psychologists and other people. Frank Luntz is one example of a guy that tells them how to talk to people and how to use words and how to, if you ever seen him, he's on Fox all the time, Frank Luntz. They got it down to an art. So I think that's the bottom line. And they're doing that in Florida, they're doing that in Ohio and Michigan and a lot of other places.
And Steve Colbert does it with humor.
Steve.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
And that made me think, this is a personal story, may mean nothing, but I really appreciate you talking about how the, Fox News kind of thing taps into that emotion, because it helped make sense of all of that. In Tennessee, where we are in Newport, which I call the Wild Wild East, it's just like really, it's an old Appalachia, everybody wants to just be, they don't want any government at all. They're just, let me do what I want to do on my piece of land and you can do what you want to do on your piece of land. So I have this one neighbor, and this story of two neighbors. First, there was this one who kind of, because of his own drug problems and sort of turned against the Peace Pagoda for reasons. And so we have these little signs that would go up the hill saying, Peace Pagoda, go this way, turn this way, turn this way. And everybody let those signs stay for years. And then this one neighbor saw that we had this one sign that was at a particular turn, and he got his then wife at the time to go out and pull that sign out and lay it on the ground. It's just a silly sort of thing. Well, a woman who I hadn't even met yet, she's watching this from her balcony. And she goes out and she gets that sign, she picks it up and she puts it on her land. She said, and then she calls me, because I had been buying fresh eggs from her. And she calls me and she says, well, I'm not going to say who. She said, but he did that, and I just wanted to let you know why that sign's on my property now. So I go and I buy my eggs from her all the time, and invariably when I go in, Fox News is on.
Yeah.
I love this woman.
Yeah.
She has very different views on race than I do, which are sometimes hard for me to absorb. But she is really, she just, for some reason, and I have no idea why, she heard that name Peace Pagoda and she liked it. And so not only that, afterwards she bought a bigger sign. It's like about this big, it's in red lettering with a big arrow. Peace Pagoda. And puts it on her property and it's,
She likes you as a person.
She likes you.
Connected with her.
And
That's
you are
a
Peace
Christian
Pagoda.
peacemaker thing.
Yeah.
She likes you, you buy her eggs, she saw your humanity.
well, and then she likes, one of the things she does, she's around the house all day and she likes to do a lot of crocheting. So she crocheted one time, she gave me this little lap thing. She says, would you take this as a gift? I said, oh, thank you very much. And then she's like, well, she can't remember his name. She says, that other man up there, she says, I'd like to do one for him. She says, but it's gotta be men's color. And she said, I'm gonna do one with camouflage. I said, well, that would be great, then he can go out into the woods and put it over and we won't find it. So I just cannot imagine getting this little camouflage. But wouldn't you know, next time I go down and buy eggs, and it's lovely. It actually looks more like earth colors, because she did the camouflage with greens and browns. It's very true.
Naomi Klein's latest book, This Changes Everything, is really a good read. What she's talking about is, basically, we don't have time now. The scientific evidence is there, and we're turning our minds away from it, many people. But there's an asteroid coming towards planet Earth, and the asteroid isn't coming from outside, it's inside, it's us. We're all part of that asteroid, we're destroying the Earth. And she says that awareness has to get out there, and that will change everything, because I envision if an asteroid were coming towards the Earth and they picked it up and they said, this is definitely it's going to be worse than the one that wiped out the dinosaurs, it's definitely on track, we can't stop it. Do you think those people over there would, the fellows shooting at one another would continue shooting at if they knew they had 2 weeks before this planet gets destroyed? I wouldn't think so. I think they'd probably go home and get ready with their children and so forth. So when the reality of the situation we're in gets through, I don't think even the corporate people and the moneyed people are going to be able to withstand it. But it's coming at maybe a terrific cost, because we're not responding quickly enough, and we certainly don't want to be, I hate to use the word, suicidal about destroying the Earth so that we get out of this problem. But anyway, her book is an interesting book. Naomi Klein, This Changes Everything.
Capitalism versus the climate is the
That's
subject.
Yeah.
right, that's what it is.
Yeah.
The climate, that we have choice. Either we attend to the climate, or it's the end of the whole community. And she says that capitalism is the reason that it's going in that direction.
What's her last name?
Klein.
Klein.
She's a Canadian woman. She's written a number of books. And
Shock doctrine,
yeah.
about, the South American revolutions, which are, all economically driven.
It's very well researched.
She's
It's a
done
little
a
heavy
great
in parts because she gives you all the facts and figures, but some people have compared it to the Silent Spring, and hopefully it will.
And the name of the book?
This Changes Everything.
And you touched on it last night, but one thing that is very interesting about the timing, and she says we've got like till 2017, we are sunk. But it happened simultaneously with the 70th anniversary of the atomic age. And these are two faces of self-immolation that, the human species is in charge of. And this movement, the climate movement, you can see it already. And I just think, like somebody at the Alliance for Nuclear Accountability meeting said, I don't see how we can co-opt that. And it's like, no, we don't co-opt that. We take our stream and we join that river. But it is interesting because there are two faces to self-annihilation that are very much in our face right now.
I know we're going to stop.
Ann is saying we have to stop, but I want to just say this last thing. I like to. I consider myself a climate change activist, and I like to challenge my friends that are active in the climate change movement to talk about this piece, that the Pentagon has the largest carbon boot print on the planet.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Why is it that the climate change leadership, for whatever reasons, still appears unwilling to talk about that element? I like to ask this question. If we're serious about dealing with climate change, how are we really going to deal with it unless we restructure our society? All right? How are we going to pay, when we're in massive debt, how are we going to pay for wind, solar, rail, conversion society unless we deal with the military budget? All right? So how can we talk about climate change and not integrate the military industrial complex into that? To me, it doesn't make any sense. Thank you all very much.